stretch. You can put it on the board. Yes. Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP TV. Today's show is brought to you in part by UppercutChops.com. Check them out at UppercutChops.com for all their tasty ribeyes, filet mignons, and of course, the king of all, those massive cowboy cut and tomahawk cut ribeyes and those New York steaks, all USDA prime. Find out what's for dinner, 702-799-9935 for UppercutChops.com, 702-799-9935 for UppercutChops.com. All right, a big round of applause for everybody watching on social media and everybody, of course, on CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates, and all of our affiliates as well, all of our independents, plus Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Time Warner, WOW Cable affiliates, and Hotel TV in over 600,000 rooms, gaining about 4 million impressions per hour. Pretty big number. And guess what, folks? Right from the very top, we have a very special guest. Hell, we're going to let him introduce himself. Go ahead.
Well, good to be with you. I'm Marty Appel, longtime Yankee publicist and TV producer. I've written about 25 books, many of them on the Yankees, and I'm delighted to be with you today.
All right, that's good stuff, Marty. Thanks for joining the circus. I'm sort of a one-man circus, and I sort of prove it every day. So you've written a lot of books. You were a Yankees publicist. I want to start with the Yankees public relations director. How did you end up in that position? That's a pretty prized position in the first place.
In the late 60s, when I was in college, baseball was not really cool. Young people were not looking for professions in baseball. Football and basketball had kind of captured their minds and their interests. But I remained a baseball fan since I was 7 years old. And one day in college, I decided to write a letter to the PR chief at the Yankees, a gentleman named Bob Fischel, looking for a summer job, undefined summer job, just anything that might be available at the Yankees. At the same time, he was aware that Mickey Mantle's fan mail was not being answered. Mickey wasn't taking it home at night. So he had a need, and he had a letter from somebody interested in summer work. So I had an interview, and I got hired, and for 2 summers, I did Mickey's fan mail, formed a friendship with him out of that. And in 68, 69, in 1970, the position of assistant to Bob Fischel became available, and he elevated me to that full-time position. And by 1973, he was leaving the Yankees. Mr. Steinbrenner had come and purchased the team, offered me the chance to succeed Bob and be the PR director. So I think today I still remain the youngest person, I was 23, to hold the position of PR director on a major league team.
Marty, it seems inconceivable. Of course, in today's time, you think of the biggest sports brand in the world, the New York Yankees, and you scratch your head and say, how the heck did nobody have any interest in taking a position like that? And you're answering Mickey Mantle's fan mail for 2 years. I'm having a really hard time understanding that. But I guess in today's time, it's easy to look back and say, you know what? Wow. But back then, maybe the Yankees weren't the best team in baseball. And, well, maybe some people have fallen off, said, I want to go do something else until the Yankees return back into the winner's circle. But you almost scratch your head and say, how the heck did that happen?
It's true. And you had to be there to understand how interest in baseball was really waning. That was a down period for Major League Baseball. I think from the mid to the late 60s, Reggie Jackson, Johnny Bench, and Tom Seaver were really only the 3 super-duper stars that went into the major leagues. The game was really flattening out. Average attendance was about 21,000 in a major league ballpark that year. So by all accounts, I mean, it's really soared since then. But back then, it just was not a desired location for people in the job market.
I suppose that's the case, but let me ask you this. So the accidental Yankee fan, how did that happen? Were you a long-time Yankee fan? You said just someday something happened and you became an accidental fan. And the reason I ask about that is because I think of the 2,000 volumes, right, in your private collection. That doesn't happen on accident, young man. How the hell did that happen?
Well, I was 7 years old when I discovered baseball. I was born in Brooklyn. We were living in Brooklyn. And my first awareness of baseball was the Brooklyn Dodgers winning the World Series in 1955. From my second floor brownstone window on St. John's Place in Brooklyn, I could literally see people running out of their apartments and dancing in the streets with merriment and joy that Brooklyn had finally won its first World Series. To my 7-year-old brain, I felt terrible for the losers, the Yankees. I had no appreciation for the history of these two franchises, that the Yankees always won. So I decided to take up the cause of the underdog, and I became a Yankee fan that very day. And by the following year, my mother had picked up a Yankee yearbook at the corner luncheonette, and I was on my way. So I say to people sometimes, my whole life has been an accident. I was supposed to be a Brooklyn Dodgers fan, being born in Brooklyn, but it didn't work out that way. And of course, a couple of years later, they would have broken my heart by moving to LA. So it was all for the best, but it's kind of a crazy story how it got started.
It is. I think back to when I was 7 years old. Think about books, and I remember good old Saint Nick dropped a book in my stocking, and it was the Football Encyclopedia. And it was the only book to this day, and the degrees have piled up over time. But it's ironic because a book at 7 years of age, for example, it changed my viewpoint on football because I was really a baseball guy, and I ended up playing baseball. But the irony was that that's the only book that I willfully read from cover to cover multiple times because I wanted to know everything about the rules and the statistics. When you're 7, you just want to be a sponge. When something grabs you, it's kind of like your first Pez dispenser. Wow, it was the best thing ever. But anyway, it was a book that sort of changed things for me.
The 56 season also was my first year buying Topps baseball cards. And I don't know if kids today can really appreciate how important they were in our lives. But even today, when a player passes away from that era, my first thought is I can picture his baseball card in my head. I can't overstate the importance of the Topps baseball cards because TV was black and white, what you could barely make out with the ghosting and the rabbit ears. All the newspapers and even magazines were just publishing in black and white. And here were these beautiful artistic baseball cards in color. So you saw the uniforms, you saw the stadiums. It was a wonder to behold. And my friends who were around my age all agreed. Topps baseball cards changed everything. Fell in love with the game with them.
I would agree. As a kid, that was the thing for me. I was the baseball cards because we had black and white TVs. We didn't really have all the luxuries of everybody else. So I collected baseball cards with my sister and my friends. And we all had those cards and we trade the cards, right? Like everybody else. But it gave a different perspective because we didn't really see them in color. I didn't go to my first baseball game until I was probably about 11 or 12 years old. My father took us. But geez, seeing those color cards, like you say, really brings a different perspective. It sort of brings them to life in a different way.
Absolutely. Along the way on my professional journey, I did PR for Topps. And what a treat it was to be there at one of the building blocks of my career, actually being as their spokesman. So that was great fun.
So being the spokesman for Topps, what was a typical day for the baseball card spokesman?
Well, there was a lot of competition in those years. You had Upper Deck and Fleer and Donruss and Score had also entered the marketplace. Prices of a single pack had changed from a nickel to 79 cents. So it was the first job I ever had that involved placing products on shelves. Baseball wasn't like that. So it was a learning experience for me, understanding the whole sales chain and distributors and how that worked. And the challenges while I was there, first of all, we saw the market for vintage baseball cards just soar. Everybody was thinking they were going to pay for their kids' college education with old cards. And then you had a baseball strike in 1994-95 that just killed off the market, because without the players on the field promoting their own names and themselves, there was no market for anybody to buy baseball cards. People were angry with baseball. So the market collapsed, and suddenly I was in Business 101 learning all about that.
That's right. You know what, Marty, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the business side of baseball. And folks, we're here with Marty Appel, and Marty has kind of done it all. You better check him out. Marty, what's your website so people can have a look at it?
Appel, PR, Appel, PR, at .com. I was giving an email.
Right, AppelPR.com. Folks, check it out while we're on break. Back here in a few minutes with Marty Appel. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come.
Attention business owners, you and your customers are listening to this right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC sports affiliates across North America, with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at 702-799-9935. Again, 702-799-9935. Or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
I'm your Ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime, nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it out here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Do you know someone with a drug or alcohol problem? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything. Stop the drug and alcohol nightmare. Are drug and alcohol problems hitting you too close to home? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything.
800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. That's 800-831-1560.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UpperCutChops.com or call 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. Or make your selection directly at UpperCutChops.com.
You're listening to the Sports Circus, and I'm Mike Golick.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP TV. This segment is brought to you in part by our guest. And I see a book. It says Pinstripes. Tell us about that book.
This is my 25th, maybe last book. Just came out a few weeks ago. In 2012, I did the history of the Yankees called Pinstripe Empire, which is very well received, still considered the definitive history of the club. This book is more of a personal memoir with behind-the-scenes, backstage stuff that really wouldn't qualify for team history to go in a scholarly book, but it's just fun, lots of anecdotes. When I was a kid, my parents had a lot of books in the house that were sort of like this in format. Short anecdotes, short stories, a page and a half, white space, photos. They were just a pleasure to read. They were really easy reading, and, it could be like a treasury of Irish humor or something like that. So I had in mind that I wanted to do a book like that of all the stories I like to tell friends. And my agent, Rob Wilson, found a publisher for it, Triumph Books, in Chicago. And the book came out last month, really got beautiful reviews on Amazon. And I did a segment on Sirius XM Radio that sent it soaring on their sports bestseller list. So the power of the media was evident on that day. And it is what it is. It's not a critical book that people have to put in their lifetime library of important reading, like Ulysses. What it is just fun, sweet stories about people I've known, encounters I had, adventures I had, traveling with the Yankees and being among such famous people like DiMaggio and Mantle and Berra and Ford, and on to Jeter and Rivera and Aaron Judge. So Pinstripes by the tail. Thanks for asking.
Yes, sir. All right. That is Marty Appel's book. As a matter of fact, I think he's written about 25 of them, if I'm not mistaken. Marty's been featured everywhere. Of course, a regular, seemingly on the Yes Network, Major League Baseball Network, Sirius XM, WPIX, all over the place. You can't get away from him. Marty's everywhere. If not, his content is everywhere as well. And a big welcome back to everybody, of course, tuning in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates and independents from coast to coast, from Honolulu all the way down to South Florida to Atlanta and a bunch of points in between. Thanks for joining us also on Hotel TV, as well as Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Time Warner, Wow Cable Television affiliates, and everybody streaming as well. That means you. All right, so Marty, in the last segment, I had mentioned something about the business side of baseball. And from your perspective, we'll get back to the baseball cards in a bit, but I want to talk more about how companies put fires out from a public relations standpoint and how sports organizations put fires out that need to basically be mitigated right away. So when there's something really bad going on, how do you handle that from the public relations side to douse that fire?
Truth well told was an expression used on Madison Avenue, and it applies. You shouldn't lie. You shouldn't pretend something bad didn't happen. You need to confront it. You need to own it. You need to face up to it. And I think once you do that, you've established your own credibility as a honest, forthcoming publicist. And so if something has gone horribly wrong, you accept it, you apologize for it, and you try and make it right. And ultimately, the public will get behind you if they like your product to begin with.
Right. I would imagine mitigating that situation as early as possible probably would be the best plan. It's just that some companies we see take the road, well, less desired in some cases. And from what I've seen, just like you and everybody else, they avoid the truth as much as possible until they absolutely have to own it. And we see that seemingly on a regular basis, don't we?
We do. Kind of starts with politicians who just deny everything. But it works its way into the business world too. And a lot of people, their first reaction is just deny, deny, deny. And then the truth catches up with them and they look foolish and their credibility is shot. So A lot of it goes back to the Tylenol scandal. Remember when somebody tampered with Tylenol in a drugstore, and they never did find the culprit. But Tylenol handled that from a PR standpoint beautifully, owned up to it, fixed the packaging of their product, promised to make good in any way they could to people who became ill from it. And they kind of changed the tone of how publicity worked for big corporations.
Well, Tylenol, in my opinion, still feels a little bit of those effects because, well, let's face it, since they had those issues, other players have come into the market and they have taken a bite out of the market and they own that part of the market. So they shot themselves in the foot in the long run to try to put out something in the short run, but that didn't work.
Right. But of course, we're talking 20, 25 years, I guess. So other products were going to come along anyway. But
I think others were brought to market almost in that perfect timing, possibly just in case. All right, so let's talk about the transition from the Dodgers to Brooklyn to LA, right? And then we see, of course, the Giants, right? So now we have the formation of what? The New York Metropolitans. And we have a color from each team, which is kind of interesting, but it seems like the Mets have been the red-headed stepchild, or maybe the orange-headed stepchild, of the New York Yankees since birth. That's a pretty fair statement, isn't it?
yeah, I'll tell you something interesting to me about all of that. When George Weiss was the general manager of the Yankees, he knew how to win, but he didn't know anything about promotion. And he turned down a cap day once when he was with the Yankees, the idea of a cap day where he supposedly slammed his fist on the desk and said, "You think I want every kid in New York walking around in a Yankee hat?" As though that was going to be a bad thing. Then he goes to the Mets when they were born in 1962. He drafts terribly, he produces the worst team in baseball history up to this year. And all of a sudden he's a promotional genius, hiring Casey Stengel, hiring Lindsey Nelson, Ralph Kiner, and Bob Murphy as announcers, the mascot, the theme song, the new breed of fans yelling "Let's go Mets" and having a banner day with them. Everything he touched probably still exists to this day. He was a genius on the wrong side, on the promotion side with the Mets, and he couldn't field a good team as a general manager. He was actually president.
You know, the Mets have had their share of good teams, but it seems that it doesn't matter how much money they spend. They'll go and get these great players, but there's a chemistry problem. Now, we see the same thing. We saw this maybe over the last 25 years with the Oakland Raiders, go to football, right? The Raiders would go out and they would go and get this guy and that guy and this guy and that, but they couldn't play together. Do you see that happening with the Mets over the last couple of decades for the most part?
For the most part. I mean, I'm a Yankee, and I'm not supposed to like the Mets, but I like their fans. I like their culture. And
hey, they buy books too.
What's that?
They buy books too.
Yeah. And I say nice things about them in this book. Because the Yankees played at Shea Stadium for 2 years while Yankee Stadium was being renovated. I was the PR guy at the time, and the Mets couldn't have been nicer to us. That was a great relationship. It's funny, when you work in the industry, your rooting interest has to do with friendships you've formed at other teams. So, like, if you ask me which teams I root for, they're teams where I have a genuine friendship with their PR director or their general manager or something like that. It's interesting when you're in the industry. I don't hate the Red Sox. I admire Red Sox Nation and the beautiful Fenway Park, and I love the culture of the Red Sox. So I don't fit all the Yankee stereotypes in that sense by being tolerant of the Mets and the Red Sox. Go.
No, thinking about where I grew up, of course, we had two baseball teams there as well, and I rooted for both teams as a kid, but I got tired of watching the Cubs trade really good player after really good player after really good player. It's like, what are we doing here? There goes Lou Brock. There goes Rick Mundy. There goes Jose Cardinal. There goes Bill Madlock, and on and on and on and on. And all the way into the 1980s, when for me, as a young, aspiring baseball pitcher, I see the guy that brought the split-fingered fastball really to prominence in the game, and I see him go to the Cardinals of all teams. And I'm just scratching my head saying, all right, I've had it. I'm washing my hands of the Cubs, and that's the end of it. I live and die with my beloved White Sox, and they kind of stink right now, and that's okay. It's just the reality is when they break your heart over and over, you can only take so much. And so I completely understand the idea of having friends in the industry, and I have friends in the organization on the north side of town in Chicago, but for the life of me, I just can't bring myself to root for that club. There's 162 games played every year, and I root for them to lose 162 every year. I can't help it. That's just me. Tell you what, Marty, hold that thought. I want your opinion on this with the Mets and Yankees. We're going to be back here in just a couple of minutes with 25-book author, publicist, New York Yankees, producer. He's done it all, folks. Back here in a few minutes with Marty Appel. Lots more to come. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
My favorite one had to do with the Green Bay Packers. And I love the fact that they dealt off Ty Montgomery because of a blown assignment. Green Bay isn't Green Bay unless they have a good running game. Then they can win 10 Super Bowls. The fact is, you don't have a running game. You've got 70% passing, and that's not where Aaron Rodgers needs to be. He needs to be in a position where he's got a running game to offset the passing game and so forth. I like the move. Green Bay didn't have a running game anyway, so all they're doing is saying, we're going to get rid of you because you don't follow instructions.
Well, he made one of the most boneheaded plays I've ever seen. There's 2 minutes and 5 seconds on the clock. They traded him on Tuesday.
They should have cut him on Sunday night.
He shouldn't have been on the plane back to Green Bay.
Right, they should have made him walk back to Green Bay.
No, it was a terrible play. Now, he's not a stupid guy. He went to Stanford.
Really?
He's not a dumb guy.
He's not a dumb guy, but he doesn't follow instructions.
He made a terrible play.
The fact is he didn't follow instructions. And you say he's not a dumb guy. His own agenda he put ahead of his team.
I agree.
Thus, he is a dumb guy. Right or wrong?
Wrong. He just got selfish. You're not going to convince me that a guy from Stanford's a dum-dum.
No!
Yeah, this is Sidney Justin from The Miracles.
So you heard yesterday's show at Roy Firestone. Didn't you hear a little clip about him going into the office where Smokey was at? That was really good material, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was really funny, man.
Yeah, and then you heard him.
I thought it was hilarious. It was cool, though. It was cool. Really cool story, man. I enjoyed listening to that.
Right, and then he gave a couple of bars. Can you give us a couple of more from Ooh Baby Baby? And let's see if you could do it better than Roy Firestone. Come on, man!
All right, you know what? Why not? I did you wrong. My heart went out to play. But in the game, I lost you. What a price to pay. Hey, I'm crying. Ooh, baby, baby. How's that, man?
That's
Is that okay? Is that good enough?
That's incredible.
That's fantastic.
You know why? Because that's what you do. You're in the incredible business, Sid. That's awesome. Yes. Only on the Sports Circus. You're going to get sports. You get music.
Hey, everybody. This is Barry Katz from the Industry Standard Podcast, and you're listening to the Sports Circus with Sal Tuzzolino.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP TV. Folks, make sure you check out thesportscircus.com for our upcoming guests, our prior guests, our recorded shows, which are a podcast in full. They're on all podcast platforms. And also make sure you check out some of our partners. One of those, of course, you heard earlier was uppercutchops.com. Check out uppercutchops.com for those great steaks, New York's, fillets, tomahawks, you name it, they've got it. Great stuff. Anyway, again, you can also give them a call, 702-799-9935, 702-799-9935 for all your dinner plans and find out what's coming up for the big meal, for the big game, even tailgating. All right, back here with the great Marty Appel, and Marty is a wonderful author. He's got great stories. We're going to hear about those stories in a second. But also, Marty is an Emmy Award winner. Also received a gold record for spoken words. I want to hear about that. That's really good stuff. Let's just stop right there. Marty, tell everybody about the gold record that you earned.
Yeah, well, it wasn't on my singing, I'll tell you that. But 1973 was the 50th anniversary of Yankee Stadium, and also the last year that the team played in that original stadium. So Fleetwood Records out of Boston did an album on the sounds of 50 years. And they asked me to help produce it and write the liner notes and review the script with them and everything. So it sold enough to earn a gold record, and I was blessed to receive one because I never thought there was a gold record in my future.
That's incredible. That's incredible. A lot of our guests have been, of course, in the music business or are in the music business, and they have the gold and platinums. But here you are in the sports business, and you've got a gold record.
Go figure, right?
Hey, that's great stuff. Okay, so moving on, in the Emmy department. Now, that's always that's one of those coveted awards that it feels really good to have. Talk to me about that.
For a time after I was the Yankee PR director, I was the executive producer of their telecasts on WPIX in New York. And we won an Emmy Award not for the games, but for a special we did on the life of Billy Martin. So it was like the real deal. I was hotel ballroom, hear my name announced, go up there, hold the Emmy Award up. And my dad was there because I knew I was going to win, because in that category there were only 2 nominations, and they were both shows I helped produce. So it was a sure win. And my father came up from Florida to be there to see me win an Emmy. Great moment.
That's very exciting. Very exciting. Of course, an astounding round of applause for Marty Appel and the Emmy Award. Okay, so you mentioned Billy Martin. And of course, as a kid watching him on TV and the antics and the craziness, now I'm in another city and I'm still seeing what's going on because Billy is national news at that point anywhere he went. Give me a funny story about Billy Martin.
Well, when I was the PR guy and he was the manager, I had to deal with him every day. And we really never had a bad moment. But I wasn't the sort of guy that was going to go out drinking with him and his coaches at night. So it was like a professional relationship. And somehow I used to think sometimes that I'd walk out of his office after I finished, and he was like giving me a silent insult, like I was a moron for asking the questions I was asking. So it was never a comfortable relationship, but we never had a bad moment, I'll say that.
But your relationship with Mickey Mantle was a little bit different, wasn't it?
That was a wonderful relationship. As I mentioned, I started out doing his fan mail. All the fan mail was the same. You're my favorite player. Please send me an autographed baseball. So there was nothing really interesting to go over with him in person, except I always found something that I had to have FaceTime with him and do in the clubhouse. So he saw right through me, and he was kind of amused by my little ploy to always have time with him. but we hit it off, even though we're very different people. He was an Okie from Oklahoma, and I was a New York City kid. And we had a friendship that lasted until he died in 1995, which I treasure to this day because it was Mickey Mantle, and Mickey Mantle knew my name. Who would have ever thought that?
Right. And you know what? I think I was one of those guys sending in the request, hey, I'd like an autographed ball, because I actually have one right over there.
There you go.
That's one of those things. You know, that's the coveted ball. You got to have that. I've got a Williams over there, a Ted Williams, a Hank Aaron, and a Willie McCovey. Yep,
Beautiful.
Those are the only autographed baseballs that I care to have, and I've had them for a very, very long time. I'm not one of those guys that chase people down for autographs. And even as a kid, I got some, but we didn't have great players that played for our teams. Well, more importantly, the White Sox. I went to a lot of those games. We had a few good guys, but this was after the flurry of good guys that they had from the 1960s and maybe the very early 70s. But New York was just chock full of great players, left, right, and center.
You know, it was also interesting historically, when there were only 16 teams in the majors, there would be days when all three New York teams were home. The schedule makers try to avoid that, but they couldn't always avoid it. So think about it. There were 16 teams. You had 6 of them in New York City at the same time. Yankees, Dodgers, Giants, and the teams they were playing. And since there were a lot more day games then, these teams would all congregate together at Toots Shor's or Jack Dempsey's in Manhattan. And 6 of the 16 teams were in New York at once, congregating in these restaurants in the evening. It's an amazing thing to think about. And of course, the sports writers were there. So everybody knew everybody, and it was a beautiful time.
Well, you know, a lot of the fans that are out there that watch baseball today, and even, we'll say the last 15, 20 years, they don't realize that, look, it's a business. It's a job. It's your job to go, whether you're playing in Team A, Team B, or Team Z, it doesn't matter. The reality is it's a job. But a lot of these guys are friends off the field, where a lot of people I know say, well, hey, you're in Chicago, like in football. How can you root for Green Bay? Well, I have friends that have played or play in the organization, so I kind of root for my friends. I mean, I can't root for the Packers. It is what it is. But ultimately, I root for my friends to do well, and when they do their autograph signings, I'm always trying to help give them a little extra publicity because they're good people. And so when the fans get past the idea that, okay, you have an allegiance to a team, I think that's great. But the reality is these are people. They have families. They work just like everybody else. They have the same toolbox. They use their tools a little differently. That's all. A lot of people seem to miss that idea.
It's a good point that you raised, and it's a great fraternity. I mean, I loved being in it, still in it to a sense, and wonderful people. And the relationships are stronger than TV viewers would understand, because the producers and the directors of telecasts today, it's too much work, really, to find out who played against who in high school, and they happen to be on the opposing teams today. A lot of that goes on. Even travel teams in Little League. There's a lot of guys that go on to play against each other in professional baseball, and it's hard to survey everything and explore that, but that's always sort of the inner game. People who knew each other since they were kids, now playing against each other in the major leagues.
Yeah, and that's a great thing, though. You think about kids playing against one another when they're, I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever, and then they see each other maybe in high school. Then they have these traveling leagues, right? So I think about back when I was in high school, we played our conference high school teams or whatever. But then when you realize that, hey, that's somebody that you saw in Little League, now you're playing against them in high school, and then maybe you're in A-ball or something or in double A, it's like, hey, there's that guy again. And now you have a friendship, because before they were sort of adversarial, but now it's like, wow, I've seen this guy for the last 12 years. He's gotten really good. And then he's saying the same thing about you. And then as you go up the ladder, now you're playing AAA ball against one another, and you're almost rooting for each other just to make the show. And so It's really a cool dynamic. And I think a lot of people miss that. Take 30 seconds and talk about that real quick.
Well, it is true. And as I say, it takes a lot of legwork to go in the clubhouses before the game and go around to all the players and say, hey, is there anybody on the other team that you have a history with which we might not know about? And there's be a lot of cool stories about that during the telecast if people took the time to discover that.
You know, a lot of people don't take the time because they're only worried about, well, geez, we're worried about, is our team going to win, and can we get out of the ballpark fast enough? Because with all these rule changes, which I want to talk about in the next segment, that's something that, boy, it's a real rough thing for me to even fathom. A pitch clock and all this other crap. Tell you what, Marty, we're going to be back with you in just a few minutes. Everybody else, stick around for our last segment here on the Sports Circus. Here with the great Marty Appel, author, producer. He's done it, Emmy Award winner, gold record. He's got it all. Folks, check him out at appelpr.com. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come.
Running out of voice.
Are you a small business owner or pursuing the dream of starting your own company? Do you know where to start or how to grow that existing business? The American Business Trust Company has the answers you need. The American Business Trust Company can help you start up with capital, business strategy, sales, and marketing, and establish your company with a physical location or an online presence on the internet. You decide. You bring the idea. Then American Business Trust can help with the rest. For a free evaluation, visit them online at abtrustco.com. That's abtrustco.com. Or call them at 657-600-1876. That's American Business Trust Company. 657-600-1876. Call them today. They'll help your business right away. That's American Business Trust Company. Online at abtrustco.com. American Business Trust Company.
So, you want to be in show business. Do people tell you that you're really funny, you have a great personality, and you should have your own talk show? Many of us have been told that, but we don't know how to get started. It's easier than you think. Let the pros at Cali Vegas give you a free talent evaluation. Call 949-445-1119 and learn how quickly you can create, produce, and host your very own talk show. Imagine not having to sit in traffic every day, commuting back and forth to the same old boring job. Get started in television or radio today with your free talent evaluation from Cali Vegas. Call 949-445-1119 or visit them online at calivegas.com. Make your dream come true today and create your new career and learn how to become a television or radio star with the help of Cali Vegas. 949-445-1119. Call now.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average and best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UpperCutChops.com or call 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. Or make your selection directly at UpperCutChops.com.
Hey, this is Tommy John, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP.TV. Make sure you check out, again, thesportscircus.com for our upcoming guests, our prior guests, recorded shows, and, of course, go to our partners page. One of those partners that's been with us since the very beginning is the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Check them out at csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events, csncoyotes.com for the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Of course, they get the super applause because they've been with us since the very beginning. And that's, about 2,000 shows ago. All right, welcome back to everybody on television, Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Time Warner, Wild Cable, and all of our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates, and our Independence, Hotel TV, and, of course, everybody else streaming. You know who you are on social media. Back here with Marty Appel, New York Yankees publicist, author, Emmy Award winner, gold record. He's done it all, of course, which I mentioned. And Marty, in the last few segments, we didn't touch upon this because I kind of wanted to save this to the end, and that is the idea of sports betting legalized on this large scale outside of Las Vegas and Atlantic City. Now it's basically everywhere. How do you feel about that?
Frightened that there's inevitably going to be a serious scandal. I mean, it almost broke baseball in 1919, betting. I can't believe that the owners were so greedy as to say, let's go for it and pick up the revenue from it. But it's really going to be like the third leading source of revenue after attendance and television dollars. It's a scandal waiting to happen because someday a cousin of some star player is going to bet that the player strikes out 3 times in one game and wins a lot of money, and somebody tracks it to it being, hey, isn't that so-and-so's cousin? And we don't know for sure if it was a fix, if the player struck out 3 times because his cousin was going to make 50 grand. But just the scepter of it being a possibility cast such a dark cloud over the game. Horrible to me that this was allowed to happen.
I agree. And worse, look, this is not just baseball. It's baseball, football, basketball, hockey. And in fact, recently, I can't remember the date, it doesn't matter, but recently there was a player from the NFL that was, I guess, found guilty or something to the effect. I guess there was enough evidence, mounting evidence, to prove that he was using another person's account that was set up for these betting things and betting with his team as part of the 2 teams that were playing. And that absolutely screams of corruption and bad, bad, bad. Nothing good, in my opinion, is going to come out of sports betting, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, hockey. It's just headed down a very dubious path. And I live here in Las Vegas, and I see this where the average would-be 21 player. Now, in 21, the average winning hand is 19.5. The average average good player wins 2 out of every 7 hands, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is, I think the casinos are scooping up money from people in ways that they wouldn't suspect because of their love for a game growing up. Oh, I could bet on it now. And that, to me, is the core of what is wrong with a lot of things in this country.
Well, I don't want to go there, what's wrong with the country, but I will harp on just the fact that betting and baseball, after a lifetime of seeing no betting permitted signs in the ballparks, has just been a horrible development. I hate it so much.
Yeah, and you know what, Marty, also there's a bigger problem going on with the game itself. Let's stick with baseball because of your ridiculous record, your track record with the New York Yankees. This is the accidental Yankee fan, folks, in case you don't know. Tell you what, Marty, plug your books real quick again so people know what you've written and where they can find your books.
Well, the most recent books were Pinstripe Empire, which is the history of the team. The paperback softcover version is updated through 2020. Casey Stengel, baseball's greatest character, was a well-received biography of baseball's greatest character, Charles Dillon, Casey Stengel. And the new book is Pinstripes by the Tail, which are just pleasant, funny anecdotes of my half-century in and around Yankee baseball. Not all of it is Yankees. Some of it goes elsewhere. But I wouldn't have met John Lennon or other people if it hadn't been for my Yankee connection. So it's all in there, and it's been well received.
And people could find those books at appelpr.com, correct?
Or Amazon is the buyer's choice these days. Some nice reader comments on the Amazon page if you get a chance to look it up.
Marty, do you have audiobooks as well?
Not only do I, but the Casey Stengel biography, I got to read it. So it's my voice on the audio version, and that was a kick. That took 6 days in a recording studio, and I had a ball doing it.
Wow, that's good stuff. Yeah, audiobooks is, because people are not reading audiobooks, right? So if somebody sends me a book, I think that's great, and I will read through it. But the audiobooks are so easy because you can do it on the go.
Yeah, although I myself am not a big listener, partly because I live in Manhattan, I don't have a car, and they're very much used while you're driving. Right. But it was a great kick to record it, and my one and only voiceover professional experience.
That's good stuff. All right, so back to the baseball rule changes, right? So the bases are 3 inches bigger on either side, or 6 inches. We got a half a foot. How many plays at second base do we see are just bang, bang plays? And literally that half a foot means the difference between a stolen base and a throwout. And adding an extra 6 inches to the bases is one issue. Oh, by the way, now you have these engagements, right, to first base, right? So a pitcher can go once, right? They can go twice, but on the third time they make their move to first, they've got to pick that runner off. How do you feel about this?
I think it's ultimately going to make the stolen base too easy. And I think that baseball rule makers may have to take a harder look at that. Remember, if you will, the original size bases from last year went back to 1876. That's a long time without tampering with something that sacred as the size of the base. But if this year catchers wind up throwing out 21% of base stealers, it's going to be an invitation for everybody to just turn singles into doubles every time. So I'm cautious about that, and I'm watching it carefully.
Imagine what Ricky Henderson would do in today's time.
Well, he did it in the old times, too.
I know, but imagine now with these rules.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know. That's the one thing that it really makes me scratch my head and say, well, geez, Ricky would have stole 2,000 bases if he was coming up at this particular time. I mean, he was lightning fast. He knew how to read pitchers. He was just that guy, the prototypical leadoff hitter. Okay, so let's go to the pitch clock. How do you feel about the pitch clock?
Wonderful. And almost everybody I talked to feels the same way. The games had become too long. Everybody thought so. Front office people, players, outfielders standing out there waiting for the pitch were practically falling asleep. This was such a welcome change that the players brought on themselves by taking too long between pitches. The fact that they could knock off a half hour per game and that a night game's over around 9:35, it's a beautiful thing. A lot of people were either not seeing the late innings or just losing interest in the game. So I'm happy with it.
So as a former pitcher, I know I had to work fast because I would hear it if I wasn't working fast enough. My outfielders behind me, they would look at me and say, "What are you doing? Stop dawdling around the hill and throw the damn ball." Because a lot of times they would literally be out to lunch or out to dinner and they're flat-footed. And so they really weren't in position. I guess this forces them to be in position and it forces them to stay focused for a lesser period of time because they know the pitch is coming.
Yeah, I just like everything about it, especially the speed of the games now. And the pitchers have all adapted to it quite well, to the point where I think ultimately the telecast will stop showing the pitch clock because there'll be, one infraction per game, if that. So it becomes sort of irrelevant to watch the clock.
Marty, what about the inspections of the pitchers after innings looking for spider tack or your favorite goop to put on the ball?
it seems a little crazy, but then occasionally they catch someone. Domingo Germán on the Yankees recently got suspended for it. So I guess it has to continue going, but all right, they do it during the commercial break anyway. It doesn't slow anything down.
What do you think would have happened with Gaylord Perry?
I guess he would have had a brief career.
He very well could have. All right, the final rule that I just want to mention real quick is extra innings starting off with a guy on second base.
I embraced that to a point. I would have started it in the 12th inning. I would have let him play the 10th and 11th under existing conditions. And then, all right, you're running out of pitchers. This is a problem. 12th inning, you can get the ghost runner on second base. I would be okay with that. And maybe that'll be altered.
I would think the 12th inning seems reasonable because you got to let these guys fight it out. They just played 9 innings, and now you got to change the rules on them in the 10th inning, almost like, now if you don't eat your vegetables, you're not going to get any dessert, young man. So it seems to be that kind of an idea. But I would like to maybe see them go, like you said, to the 12th inning. I think that's a good one. In fact, we'll give you an astounding round of applause for that. Maybe we'll have to talk to somebody about that one. All right, so Marty, listen, you got about a minute. I want you to talk about your books real quick again, where everybody could find them, everything about you, how to follow you. Go ahead and take it from there.
The website is appelpr.com. The current book is Pinstripes by the Tail. I'm raising the wrong hand here. And it's a collection of about 150 lighthearted, feel-good anecdotes in and around Yankee baseball from the half century I've been around them.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And in fact, I'll have to see if I could find those myself. And me, I'm an audiobook kind of guy, so I could probably find that on Audible, I'm guessing. But I tell you what, Marty, it's been a pleasure having you on the circus. And hopefully, at some point in the future, when something good happens, maybe with, I don't know, maybe with Yankee baseball, maybe even the Mets, because you said you kind of root for both teams a little bit. Maybe we'll have to bring you back. What do you think?
It's been a pleasure. I look forward to it.
That's good stuff. All right, folks, that's the great Marty Appel. Make sure you check him out at appelpr.com, and you can find all of his information there. He's a very interesting guy. He said a lot of cool stuff and happens to be an accidental Yankee fan. So that's going to do it for the circus today. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, and we'll see you in about 23 hours right here on your favorite station. So until then, so long, everyone.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UpperCutChops.com or call 702-799-9935. That's 702-799-9935. 702-799-9935. Or make your selection directly at UpperCutChops.com.